Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have a very exciting video. So I'm going to be comparing the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette as well as the Wet n Wild eyeshadow palette. Looks like this, and is in the shade Rose in the Air. So if you couldn't tell, these shades look exactly alike. They are so similar, it's not even funny how similar these are. So I'm going to be testing these out for you because I know Modern Renaissance is a amazing palette. So I'm very excited and interested to see how the Wet n Wild palette performs, because I know this one, I know how this baby performs, but I don't know how this performs. This is brand new to me. So if you want to see me test out these two eyeshadow palettes, then keep on watching. Alright, so just to kind of talk about these two palettes, this palette is actually fairly kind of new. I'm not exactly sure when it came out, but it's definitely new. And this palette right here is $4.99. It's $5. And the Anastasia palette is $42. So that is a huge price difference. This is like my go-to palette, but I know this palette is expensive. So that is why I wanted to test out these dupes, because if this is a dupe for the Anastasia, that will save you guys a lot of money. Anastasia palette has 14 shades and the Wet n Wild palette has 10 shades. As you can see, these are all the shades that have a color, the Wet n Wilds. So the only shades that didn't have dupes were Golden Acre, Burnt Orange, Primavera, and Venetian Red. But honestly, the color, these two look so similar that this shade in the Wet n Wild palette looks like both of them. So I got all these swatches on my arm, so that's pretty cool. I'm going to use this side as the Anastasia side and this side as the Wet n Wild side. First, I'm just going to be taking the shade Tempera and taking the white shade from the Wet n Wild palette and applying those on my lid. So at least I'm noticing with this shade, for the Wet n Wild shade, it is a little bit more powdery than the Anastasia. Honestly, I do kind of expect that a little bit just because it's a lot cheaper than Anastasia eyeshadow. So I'm just gonna dip into Raw Sienna as this transition shade in the Wet n Wild. Like, these colors are identical. They're exactly the same. I want to dip into the shade Love Letter. I've never put this on my eye before. And I think this is a good color to see, how the pigment pays off and how it blends out. And on the Wet n Wild, I'm taking this shade. So Anastasia one is extremely pigmented. I only dipped in there like once and I got a ton of pigment. That Wet n Wild color. So far, very pigmented as well. And these look identical. Alright, so for the lid shade, I'm going to be taking Primavera. And for Wet n Wild, I'm going to be taking the golden shade right here. And I'm actually not going to use any Fix Plus just because I kind of want to see how it looks without it. I'm going to put that all over my lid. And let's take the Wet n Wild. So I can tell it's definitely not as like pop of color. So I'm gonna dip into it again. So you may need to use Fix Plus for this one, just because I'm not getting as much pop. I mean, it's still a really nice golden shade, but it's not as like bold as the Anastasia shade. But I mean, even though it's not as bold, it still looks very, very similar. Like the inner corner and brow bone, I'm just gonna be taking Tempera again. I would usually say Primavera, but there isn't a shade, like a shimmery white shade in the Wet n Wild. They kind of just have the matte white or the golden. So I'm just gonna take the matte white to highlight. So for under the lash line, I'm going to take the shade Realgar, which is like a bright orange, and taking this one in the Wet n Wild palette. These look identical. They look exactly the same. And they both have a lot of pigment in them. I'm going to be adding some mascara, the Makeup Forever Excessive Lash, because I love this stuff. And I'll be right back. So I'm back with some mascara on, and guys, I gotta say, these look exactly the same. You know, I know I didn't get to use all of the shades. I tried to use as many as I could, but you know, you can only use so many shades in one eye look. When swatching the shades, you know, were the Anastasia shades a little bit creamier? Yes, they were. But the overall quality of the Wet n Wild palette was still really good. You know, I always compare things to its price point. It's not going to be as amazing and creamy and buttery as Anastasia eyeshadows, you know, it's just not going to happen because it's a $5 palette. But is it good quality for the price? It's amazing quality for the price. I would never expect eyeshadows to be this good for being $5. All the shades I used in my eyes were extremely similar. They basically felt the same besides the golden shade that I put on my lid. You know, it just wasn't as creamy, but you know, do I mind digging into the gold a little bit more? No, I don't, because I paid $5 for this. You know, it's a $35 difference between these palettes. And so I think if you have been wanting this palette, you should go check out this palette because they are the exact same colors basically. There's 4 that you're kind of missing in here, but for $5, these are basically the same. This performs amazing for being $5. So I really hope this review helped you guys and gave you any insight. Just because the palette is $5 doesn't mean it's not going to be good. Wet n Wild has been stepping up their game. They have some really amazing products out, and I was super excited to try this, and I'm so happy to say that this palette is great, and you should really try it out if you like the modern Renaissance palette, or if you even like this color scheme. Like, you might as well. It's literally $5. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.